New mechanic possibly coming for worldwide celebration. How's it, everybody? Celtic Link here. We're back for another Dokkan battle video. In today's video, as promised from our community post earlier today, we're talking about something found within the files of the most recent data download on JP Dokkan, and that is this little icon here, along with a set of subtext of code, basically showing the game what to do in certain scenarios, right? Now, what this icon seems to represent is something called Dokkan Field. Now, we don't know much about it other than basically what it executes when it activates, right? Basically, the lines of code within the game found that tell the characters and things within the game to do certain things, right? So shout out to Thieving 6, and I know he's not the first person to found that. I think Rick originally posted the first sort of findings of this, but you know, like I said initially, I wanted to wait till all the information is kind of gathered here so I can give my full thoughts and, you know, had time to process what it was that was coming out, right? So I'm not just shooting stuff out there to you guys and possibly giving wrong information. So with that said, right, Thieving 6 and Rick, they put this out, and it basically shows how this Dokkan Field thing is to activate, right? So it can be attached to one or more cards, specifically to their passives or their active skills. It triggers based on its own conditions. It can have a turn duration, all right, and they can have complete, full, multi-effect passives, just like units, right? So let's stop there and talk for a second before we go into the rest of that. So listening to this, right, can be attached to one or more cards. Now, this is interesting. Now, again, we have no idea how this is even going to be implemented, but it sounds like it's something separate than a unit itself, right? When I had initially read the details of this, I was thinking, oh, well, like, it's gonna work, and I know a few people might have mentioned this, that, oh, it might work like how a costume change, right, like the Int Goku Piccolo, or the morale boost, right, like, it might work like something like how this, like they just have it, like, more specifically akin to the morale boost, because the morale boost kind of affects the passive, right, whereas the costume change icon here that these guys have, that doesn't affect them at all, right? It's just purely aesthetic. So this was interesting, right? So like on a character like this, according to the lines of text, like you would see this icon on them here, right? Instead of this morale boost or this icon here, right? You would see this icon on the character. Now again, that's interesting, given what this says here, can be attached. Now, I'm not sure if that means that this is like some sort of separate thing, like we're getting like a field equip, and that's how it's gonna work. It's unknown, or it could just, again, be just part of the card and it's attached via the game itself, like how those guys work. That's probably the more likely scenario, but I just thought it was interesting, the phrasing there specifically, and I wanted to point that out. So moving on from there, like I said, so the field spell can have a complete, full, or multi-effect passive, just like a card. So whatever this field I keep calling it a field spell, whatever this Dokkan Field thing is, right, it essentially works like a unit's passives, right? So it would be calculated, right, if it gives any sort of stat percentage boost, right, it would be calculated along with the passives, right? There will, like I mentioned earlier, there's going to be a field button card on the card related to all of the details. It can affect enemies as well. So think of it like this, right? So I think everybody sort of made the comparison already, but like Yu-Gi-Oh! Field spells, for those of you guys who play Yu-Gi-Oh! And I think Magic the Gathering has something like this, and I think Pokemon Trading Card, like they have the gems, right? I don't know if anybody plays Pokemon Trading Card. You guys can fill me in there. I think they have something like this, like they're like the gems and whatnot, right? But either way, right? Me coming from a Yu-Gi-Oh background, right? We had these, right? the field spells, and they basically are a permanent fixture on your field unless, you know, somebody destroys it or banishes it, whatever the case may be, and it affects all cards on the field in one way, shape, form, or another, right? Like, so all the way dating back to like some of the original cards, which were just simple stat buffs to certain characters, and stat debuffs to other types of characters, like where's a good example? Like the Mountain here, right? Mountain gives all dragons, winged beasts, and thunder monsters an extra 200% attack and defense, right? So that's basically kind of how it can work, but it can also affect the enemy, right? So while like the Yami spell over here debuffs fairy type monsters while boosting what is it, spellcasters, right? It's been a minute. So that could be interesting, right? Or it could be more multifaceted from that, right? Like if you think a card like I just saw it, Skyscraper, for example, right? It adds, right? It's not just adding a buff, like it adds piercing damage to elemental hero types, right? Or I think like there's, I don't see it on here, but like there's a field spell, I think, for like fusing, right? That allows you to like more easily use fusion type monsters. I can't remember. It's been a minute since I've played, but I do remember there was something like that. I think it's here, right? The it's like the Neo Space or whatever. I remember it from the GX series, but it's been a minute, right? So I mean, it could be something along those lines. I think a lot of people have made that comparison. So like if I were to think of this in terms of Dokkan, right, where we have a character, we're assuming, that has some sort of Dokkan field effect, right? My initial thought, the first thing that pops into my mind, right, is like Goku Black Rift, right? Like if you guys remember, you know, Goku Black Rose takes out the scythe, he rips the hole, and then we get all these like different type Goku Blacks coming out. Could be something like that, right? So like the effect is the Goku Black Rift, and then like maybe it buffs extreme Realm of Gods categories, category allies, and debuffs I don't know, Pure Saiyans or something. I don't know. Well, whatever the case may be. Or well, you wouldn't want it to debuff Time Travelers because Goku Blacks would also be on that, right? So something like that, right? Or just debuff Superclass, you know, something like that. And it can affect, as it says here, both player and enemy. So that's kind of interesting, right? Or it could be multifaceted, right? Like, so it could do that, but say it also, like, you know, if you had, I don't know, what's another good one they could do, right? I'm thinking like a full power Frieza or something, right? His field effect is like blowing up Namek, so it changes the field to like the destroyed Namek, and it gives, I don't know, damage reduction to Wicked Bloodline types. You know, so it could literally be anything, right? We have no idea at this point what it could be, what it could do, but it is interesting that, you know, this is even something being considered, right? We think, like, we just got standby skills, right? Active skills are still kind of building up, right? Even though it's been a couple of years since they were introduced, right? We're still kind of slowly getting in revivals, and now we're introducing this new mechanic, right? So it's this. I'm going to be honest, it kind of feels like Dokkan's beginning to become more and more like a card game, with especially with the appearance of something like this. But, you know, it's hard to say exactly what it's going to do, but that it's going to be something, and there's a good chance it's going to be related to the worldwide. Who knows what that could be? Like I said, I'll probably throw it in a few of my worldwide predictions as we move through the month of August. Like, I mean, that's definitely one, the Goku Black one, I throw that out there. Full Power Frieza, that one I threw out there. It could also be something like, I don't know, a Piccolo who creates, or like a Kami or something, right? Who creates like Kami's Lookout or something as the field effect, right? Who knows, right? There's a lot they could do. Now, what I thought was interesting is this was included in the data download, in which this guy came about. the investigation of the Dimension Distortion Trunks team. This is the new quest mode character that is now grindable on JP Dokkan from stage 32. Now, this is interesting that this mechanic is found in the files of this guy, and I'm almost wondering if whatever this guy awakens into, it seems like he's going to awaken into an LR. I'm almost wondering if he may be the free-to-play character that introduces the mechanic, right? Whenever they introduce a new mechanic, there's always like a free-to-play version of that mechanic, right? They did it with revivals, they did it with exchanges, they did it with active skills, right? So maybe this guy, right? They're setting him up on JP Dokkan for when Worldwide happens, where this mechanic is probably going to be introduced, and this guy, when he eventually awakens into a TWAR or to an LR, although looking at his stats, and I've already seen a bunch of other people mention it, there's a good chance, based on his stat total down here, right, this is summonable character stats, which means he's probably going to awaken into a free-to-play LR. So there's a good chance he could be the free-to-play introduction to this mechanic. Who knows what he could do? Maybe it's like his Dokkan field is like a time machine or something, and it boosts time travelers, since he's on he's only on the time travelers category, so he would have to do that, right? Who knows what he'll awaken into? Maybe I'll save that for another video. I'm kind of hoping he just stays at Trunks and they just add the categories later, but it is odd that he is only on time travelers. It probably means he's going to be some type of joint forces characters, but Lord knows who is going to be his partner. I've already seen a few theories. I don't think any of them are too likely, especially considering he's a Dokkan exclusive, right? So they could literally do anything with him as long as it matched the Dokkan quest mode, right? I've heard quite a few things. I've heard, Trunks and Raditz. I've heard Trunks and Supreme Kaya Time, Trunks and Tapion. I've heard Trunks and Piccolo, right? Like given the events of the story, right? It could even be Trunks and Pan, although I think that one's unlikely, right? Because then he'd still be on Hybrid Saiyans, and he's not. So, who knows? There's probably something out there he's going to awaken into, and I think whatever it is, it will introduce this new Dokkan field mechanic in some form in a free-to-play format. Just my thoughts. So anyways, guys, that is the video. That is all we know about this new mechanic and what it could possibly bring for the future. As we get more information, I will be sure to update you guys on this and give you my thoughts as that information comes in. And make sure you guys stay tuned. I got a little discussion I'm working on with a few people on this idea. Hopefully we can get it off the ground, but I think there's a lot of potential here with this new mechanic, and I can't wait to see it take off. So anyways, guys, that is the video. If you like the video, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to the channel if you have not already. And in the comments down below, let me know, what are your thoughts on this new mechanic? Is this a welcome addition, or is this just a bit too much? Let me know in the comments down below. Otherwise, guys, as always, thanks for watching, and aloha.